What does the opposition make of the budget? We're joined now by finance spokesman Andrew Robb. A $1.5 billion surplus. Andrew Robb, have they cut deep enough?
Emma, this whole budget, from the surplus to so many other parts of it, is based on trust. It's built on trust. And I put to you, who now is going to trust Julia Gillard and Wayne Swan? This is a budget that is involved cooking the books. It's involved resorting to bribes. It's involved increasing debt, massively increasing debt. They want to take the ceiling up to $300 million. Now, they claim they've got surpluses. Now, if you've got a surplus, why do you need to increase debt? And why do you predict it? No, it's true.
But our debt is so minuscule compared to the rest of the world. No. It doesn't even bear mentioning. It's about a quarter or a fifth the size of anywhere in the US or Europe. And when it comes to Japan, it's 10 times less.
Well,
is it really such a big issue?
It is. We've got high debt because...
high debt relative to who?
No, we've got high debt. We've got debt which is high for our purposes. We've always been a country which needs smaller debt than these bigger developed countries because we're a small open economy, and when commodity prices move up and down, we are highly vulnerable to those movements. Whereas you get a big country like the US or many of the countries in Europe, they've got a big domestic economy, so they're not exposed to commodity price movements. That's why we've always had low debt relative to the rest of the world. But why should we measure ourselves against a whole lot of basket cases in Europe? Why shouldn't we measure it against Australian standards? And you only have to go back 4 years, and this government inherited $70 billion net assets. $70 billion net assets.
Yes, but as they also say, you seem to neglect the fact that we've had the biggest economic crisis since, in some measures, the Depression, and we've had also natural disasters and so on. You can't neglect the effects of those on our economy. But let's just move on for a second. Your side is eager to take the reins of government. So what kind of surplus target would you be looking for?
Well, we would look to run strong surpluses.
Well, how big? Is $1.5 billion enough for 2013?
No, we will aim to get this economy and get this budget, this very dysfunctional budget, this budget which is unbelievable.
Where would you get it to?
Unbelievable. You cannot believe what's in this budget.
What sort of a surplus figure would you be looking for?
We'll be looking at 1% of GDP as a target surplus that we could and should deliver. We were able to do it.
So about 10 times the size of this one.
We were able to do it. Yeah, this is not a surplus. This is a deficit. They have created this. This is manufactured.
So you would be looking for a surplus at around $15 billion.
We're 1% of whatever GDP is at the time. That is the target that we were able to deliver it during the Howard years.
How quickly
and
would
more.
You be able to deliver that? If there was an election in the next couple of months, how quickly would you be able to deliver such a target?
Well, we will aim to get the budget into a real surplus to start with, and then to build it. But we have got a situation with this government which has increased spending. You just heard Penny Wong trying to make the case that they've been prudent and they've shown discipline, and yet the spending this year in this year's budget is $100 billion more than 4 years ago. Now, that's 40% increase at a time when inflation has increased by 13%. This is a massive increase in spending, the biggest increase in spending in the country's history over 4 years, and they're trying to present this as prudent management of a budget. It is so deceitful. You've really got to look beyond the spin and look at the facts, and when you do strip it apart, this government, on so many counts, is misleading, is untrustworthy, and that's why there's a crisis of confidence, because people don't believe what they're doing. They won't believe this budget. They'd like to.
What's not to believe about the figures? Assuming you'll need to follow through at least some of Labor's planned spending cuts to deliver a huge surplus that you want to be able to achieve, what parts of this budget does the coalition support? What measures? Do you support the family tax benefit increases?
We are certainly inclined to support the family tax benefit because the carbon tax, which is just a couple of months away, is going to so demonstrably monster a lot of families' budgets.
What about the school kids bonus?
The school kids bonus, we're not inclined to support that, we'll take it to the party room. But the school kids bonus is basically a bribe to overcome the fear and the panic that's now on the Labor camp about the carbon tax. If it was to be spent on education, that's another matter. What they did was take an education package, which people applied for as they spent money on education, and they've now converted it into a bribe, which they will mail into people's bank accounts, just like the cheques they mailed out 3 years ago. And it is not targeted at education in any way. Now, we would have a different view if it was structured as it used to be and as it was and still is until tonight, an education program, but they've rejigged it to give this bribe and to get a big figure up on the TVs and the papers tomorrow, when in actual fact it'll probably be paid with borrowed money, it'll add to the debt, and at the same time it will contribute further to a deficit. Now, you say, what's to believe about this budget? Just tonight, looking at those programs, there's $8 billion which was to be spent next year, this next financial year. It's now going to be spent this financial year. And there's $6 billion in the NBN, which has been taken off the books. So there's $14 billion that I can give you without looking through the hundreds of pages. There's $14 billion which should have been against spending this next year, which is actually against this year. The deficit really is a starting point of about $12 billion.
Andrew Robb, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for coming in.
It's my pleasure. Thanks, Emma.